Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new session with Rights and Responsibilities Awareness Initiative. Today, we are lucky to have Kelly Wang again with us. Thank you, Kelly, for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Haitham, and I'm so excited to be back for RAI tonight. And I'm very excited for the topic as well, because tonight we're going to be talking about public speaking. And this is a very important skill for everyday life and especially important for employment and education. So I'm excited to talk to you about that tonight.
Thank you very much.
Now, if you are kind of afraid of public speaking, I totally understand. It can definitely be nerve-wracking, especially if you are speaking a new language, for instance. So tonight, I want to give you lots of tips and pointers on how to improve and how to feel a bit more confident and comfortable. So here's what we're going to cover tonight. After an introduction, we are going to talk about some preparation tips that you can do ahead of the presentation, some general tips, and then we're going to dive into the types of public speaking, how to analyze yourself after the speech, and some additional resources at the end to wrap things up. So before we dive right in, I want to talk a bit more about me. So my name is Kelly Wang, and I'm currently a Master of Education student at Ontario Tech University. I'm also a journalist for a station in London called 980 CFPL, or AM 980 on your radio dial. I'm a research assistant at the STEAM 3D Maker Lab, so I do quite a bit of research for them, but I also include some conferences and presentations, and I'm also a tutor for reading and writing. On the volunteering side, I am a very proud presenter with the RAI. I'm also a curriculum developer with Low Entropy, which is a nonprofit in BC, and I'm a board member with the Montessori Academy of London and also the Thames Region Ecological Association. So with all of my tasks, I definitely do quite a bit of public speaking. Being a journalist, I get to speak on the radio every weekend and talk to the London community. Being a research assistant, I get to give presentations and conferences, and sometimes they range from 3 people to a lot more than 3. And throughout my experience, I've developed some skills and tips and tricks that I want to share with you tonight. And I do want to emphasize that I was once upon a time a new English speaker as well. I came to Canada when I was 7.5 and had to learn English from scratch. And, before that age, I did do like a little bit of public speaking as a child, but as a child, it doesn't impact you the same way as an adult. And especially with learning a new language in school, public speaking was something that I was terrified of for many years. But now it's almost something I enjoy because I get to convey information to all of you. So that's what we're going to focus on tonight. So 2 examples of my recent experiences with public speaking. The tweet on the left side is me presenting at York University CSSE conference back in May. I presented my research on TikTok and mental health, which is part of the research that I do with the lab. And that was a great experience. There were many people there, and I got to mix and mingle and get to know everybody and their research a bit better and share my own. And then the photo on the right side is me presenting at my school's 3-minute thesis competition, where graduate students, whether they're in their master's or PhD, have just 3 minutes to talk about their research in a competition. Not a long time at all, and those 3 minutes just fly by. It was a great experience, and I'm happy to say I made it into the finals. So let's dive right into the introduction. And first thing I want to say is if you are nervous about public speaking, you are definitely not alone. Statistics show that about 75% of the population feel nervous about public speaking. And this can be anywhere from standing up in front of a whole auditorium full of people and giving a speech, or even just something as conveying your thoughts in a meeting. And there's actually a name for a fear of public speaking, and that's called glossophobia. Now, 10% of the population actually enjoy public speaking, and there are another 10% that are terrified of public speaking, and there is an anxiety aspect to that. However, only 8% of those who fear public speaking actually seek professional help. Now, there are a lot of reasons why you may be afraid of public speaking. I know for me, it's, all eyes on me. What if I mess up? People are going to think, people are going to notice. And it sucks because there are some factors that you cannot control. However, there are factors that you can control to make you feel a bit more in control of your situation. So some factors that you cannot control are the demographic and population of your audience. So who's watching you and how many people are watching you. A lot of the times you can't choose the format of your speech. So whether that's online or in person, I guess with COVID, we have a lot more online options now. However, usually you're assigned to one and the goal of your presentation as well. If you're, for example, me attending 3-minute thesis, my goal was to win. However, if you're a student and you're trying to present something, your goal is to get a good grade. You can't really choose the goal of your presentation, but you can make it as good as you can. Here are some things you can control to make you feel a bit more in control of your situation. You can control the familiarity you have with your topic. So if it's something that you already know a lot about, you're probably more comfortable talking about it. If it's something you don't know a lot about, you probably have to, work on it a bit more, educate yourself on it a bit more, probably practice more than you usually would. You can control your methods of preparation. So what works for you, what doesn't work, and that's something that's going to take you a little while to figure out. We will talk about some methods of preparation later on. And also just make sure you keep the right mindset throughout the process. It's really easy to feel anxious and stressful and feel like, oh, I can't do this. But you gotta keep the right mindset, even though it's not always easy. And we will go through that as well. So next up, I have some preparation tips, aka what you should do before and during your presentation. So before your speech, here are a few things that you can keep in mind. First up is finding out the who, the when, and the where. So if you're presenting somewhere, you can ask the coordinator, if you can, where you're presenting and when you're presenting. That way you know for sure. If it's possible, try and visit the space ahead of time just so you can really see what your environment is going to be like when you do present live. And if you can't do that, then you can definitely visualize it just to give yourself a bit of mental preparation. You can also ask about who will be there and how many people are attending. Not something you can control again. However, knows that you know your audience, and sometimes you can adjust your message to your audience as well. It's also important to try to familiarize yourself with the equipment first. So if you're presenting at a location, are you going to use a microphone beforehand? Test that mic out. Are you using a string mic, or are you using a mic that you can hold? Test it out just so you're a bit more comfortable with it. Are you using Zoom to present like me tonight? Log on to Zoom beforehand, test out the screen sharing feature, check how you look, check your background, just to make sure that you're a lot more comfortable with not just your environment, but also the equipment that you will have to work with. When you're giving your speech, it's also important to time yourself just to make sure you get the timing right. And it's important to stay on track as well in terms of your pace. Now, if you're like me and you're too excited or you're nervous, you tend to talk a little bit faster when you speak and then people don't really know what you're saying. So just calm it down, take a deep breath, and remember to practice at the pace that you want to go at. Also, make sure to practice the ending just as much at the beginning. If you're doing a presentation from beginning to end, you likely start at the beginning first in terms of making the slides and memorizing everything. And you kind of neglect the ending a little bit just to make sure you're comfortable with the ending as well, so you can start strong and finish strong. Dress comfortably. Now, this is important because you want to look and feel your best. You want to feel confident, but you also want to be comfortable. If you want to wear heels, but there are, stairs on the stage, be careful with that, for instance, and make sure that the clothing that you choose and the accessories don't conflict with the equipment. For example, dangly necklaces and string mics do not mix. I learned that the hard way at 3-minute thesis competition, where I had to tuck my necklace in because it kept interfering with the mic that was clipped onto my shirt like that. Before you present, take some deep breaths. And that's just going to make sure you have enough oxygen and your brain has enough oxygen for you to actually present and feel comfortable. Because if you don't do that, you might feel lightheaded, especially if your breathing gets a little bit fast when you're nervous. That might lead to fainting, which is not good. And if possible, try your best not to memorize your words because you just sound so much flowier when you speak naturally. If you read from a script, I guess that makes you a bit more comfortable because you know what you're about to say. However, you just sound a lot more flowier when you're not reading word for word. So if you have bullet points, definitely use them as references, but you don't have to read word for word and memorize everything. However, if you absolutely must memorize something, for example, if you are auditioning for a play and you got to prepare a monologue, Hamlet has a lot of monologues, by the way, you can try this technique that I've used a few times during my theater days, and that's to write down the first letter of every word that you must memorize. So if you absolutely cannot forget a single word because it's somebody else's words and it's part of a play, I'm just going to use this as an example. This is a section of a monologue from Hamlet. And what you would do is you would transfer the first letter over. So that's what you would write over there. So TBONTB. However, you would keep the punctuations where they are. And then when you're trying to memorize the lines, read through it a few times and then only look at the letters to see if you can memorize it. And then just seeing the first letter can help you kind of prompt a word in your head if you forget. And it's a really good way to memorize every single word and not forget a single one. Now I want to go back to how to work under pressure and how to remain calm. This is a video by TED Ed, and it is called How to Stay Calm Under Pressure, not necessarily just for public speaking, but overall. And I found this video to be quite helpful. So I'm going to play it for everyone, and it's about 4 minutes long, I believe.
Your favorite athlete closes in for a victorious win. The crowd holds its breath, and at the crucial moment, she misses the shot. That competitor just experienced the phenomenon known as choking, where despite months, even years of practice, a person fails right when it matters most. Choking is common in sports, where performance often occurs under intense pressure and depends on key moments. And yet, performance anxiety also haunts public speakers, contestants in spelling bees, and even world-famous musicians. Most people intuitively blame it on their nerves, but why does being nervous undermine expert performance? There are two sets of theories, which both say that primarily choking under pressure boils down to focus. First, there are the distraction theories. These suggest that performance suffers when the mind is preoccupied with worries, doubts, or fears, instead of focusing its attention on performing the task at hand. When relevant and irrelevant thoughts compete for the same attention, something has to give. The brain can only process so much information at once. Tasks that challenge working memory, the mental scratch pad we use to temporarily store phone numbers and grocery lists, are especially vulnerable to pressure. In a 2004 study, a group of university students were asked to perform math problems, some easy, others more complex and memory intensive. Half the students completed both problem types with nothing at stake, while the others completed them when calm and under pressure. While everyone did well on the easy problems, those who were stressed performed worse on the more difficult memory-intensive tasks. Explicit monitoring theories make up the second group of explanations for choking under pressure. They're concerned with how pressure can cause people to overanalyze the task at hand. Here, the logic goes that once a skill becomes automatic, thinking about its precise mechanics interferes with your ability to do it. Tasks we do unconsciously seem to be most vulnerable to this kind of choking. A study on competitive golfers compared their performance when instructed to simply focus on putting as accurately as possible, versus when they were primed to be acutely aware of the mechanics of their putting stroke. Golfers usually perform this action subconsciously, so those who suddenly tuned in to the precise details of their own moves also became worse at making accurate shots. Choking may not be inevitable for everyone, though. Research suggests that some are more susceptible than others, especially those who are self-conscious, anxious, and afraid of being judged negatively by others. So how can we avoid choking when it really counts? First, it helps to practice under stressful conditions. In a study on expert dart players, researchers found that those who hadn't practiced under stress performed worse when anxious, compared to those who had become accustomed to pressure. Secondly, many performers extol the virtues of a pre-performance routine, whether it's taking a few deep breaths, repeating a cue word, or doing a rhythmic sequence of movements. Studies on golfing, bowling, and water polo find that short rituals can lead to more consistent and accurate performance under pressure. And thirdly, researchers have shown that having an external focus on the ultimate goal works better than an internal focus, where someone is tuned into the mechanics of what they're doing. A study of experienced golfers revealed that those who hit chip shots while focused on the flight of the ball performed significantly better than those who focused on the motion of their arms. So perhaps we can modify that age-old saying, practice under pressure, with focus, and with that glorious end goal in sight, makes perfect. For a nail-biting example of
I personally found that video to be very helpful, not just for public speaking, which quite frankly, you're always a little bit under pressure for that, but for a lot of different areas as well. Next up, I want to move on to some general tips for public speaking. So first up, it doesn't matter which kind of public speaking you are doing. It's important to make eye contact with the audience, or at least try to not look down at your notes too much. And this is more, I guess, relevant for in-person events. For something like online, it's difficult to not look at the camera when it's right there. However, it's a good rule of thumb to not look down at your notes or read them too much. Again, just to sound a little bit flowier. Keeping eye contact with the audience means that they'll keep eye contact with you as well, and that just helps them be a lot more engaged. No matter what kind of presentation or speech you're doing, it's important to end on time, just so that your audience maintains interest and that you're not boring them for too long. You can also end slightly earlier if you can. You can ask them questions or they can ask you questions if applicable. And it's important to have a good start and make a good first impression. They say the first 15 seconds of your presentation is crucial, whether you're trying to hook your audience in by telling them something really interesting about what you're about to talk about, or if you're introducing yourself so they know you as a person and the topic that you will be presenting. During your presentation, here are the 3 M's to keep in mind. So number 1 is mistakes, which nobody wants to make. However, it's kind of inevitable. So if you stumble or make a mistake, try your best not to point it out unless necessary. For example, if you're giving data and you're giving specific numbers, if you mess up on a number, you got to correct it. However, if you make a little grammatical error, if you stumble a little bit, if you use the wrong word, but it kind of makes sense anyway, just move it along. The audience likely wouldn't have noticed, and you definitely are your biggest critique. Movements. So a good rule of thumb is to just let your body movements flow. You don't have to act too animated or rehearsed because otherwise your movements are not going to seem very flowy and natural. So just let your face, like your body, like your hands, like your arms, do the talking along with you. And also in the actual moment, if you were to forget your lines, for instance, or you just need to refocus for a moment, you can just take a moment and engage with a distraction of some sort. So for example, if you forget your lines while giving a presentation, you can point a question out at the audience. You can ask them something. You can ask your classmates something. Maybe they can give you a response while you kind of try to keep your thoughts back. Or you can try to take a sip of water as well. Keep a glass of water by your side, take a little sip while you think about what to talk about next or how to pivot if necessary. A quick tip on water, don't drink too much of it before you present, because if you're nervous, your urge to go to the bathroom may be increased, but definitely stay hydrated so that your throat sounds clear and nice and crisp when you present. Now let's talk about some what ifs. And hopefully none of these happen, but again, sometimes they're just inevitable. If you forget your lines, you can take a moment of distraction. It's also a good idea to have a plan ahead of time, because if you were to forget, you can just pivot to another section that you have a bit more knowledge on and that you're a bit flowier on. You can also try improving. So if you know the general topic of what you're about to talk about, but you kind of forgot the specific points, just try your best to figure out what you might want to say and kind of keep it flowing along. Again, if you don't point it out, a lot of the times the audience won't notice. If you are unable to finish on time, If you tend to finish too early, you can further elaborate on your presentation, what the goal was, or the significant parts of it. You can ask questions for your audience, so you can direct questions to them. What do you guys have any questions for me? I'd be happy to answer them. Or you can flip the switch. You can ask them questions. How did you guys feel about this topic? What did you guys learn from this topic, etc.? That also promotes a conversation between you and the audience, forming a deeper connection. Now, if you're running out of time, have a plan in mind ahead of time on what you could cut, so you can save some less significant information towards the end. So if you're running out of time, you just cut that whole section. Another good tip is to not talk too fast. If you're running out of time, maybe you want to talk fast so that you can squeeze information in. What that does is that you just sound nervous, you're not as clear, you're fumbly, your audience kind of lose interest, or they notice all of these things and they just don't really understand it anymore. So try your best to keep a pace. You rather cut something than to talk too fast and speed through a section that your audience won't fully understand. And if you absolutely cannot finish your presentation on time, you can also let your audience know where they can find the remaining information. For example, and I'll do this at the end, I'll give you guys an email address if anyone has comments or questions. If you have a blog, you can ask them to check that out, or you can let them know when your next session is going to be, so that they can meet you again and get to know the information a bit better. Now, if you are too nervous to present, especially if you're one of the 10% of people who are absolutely terrified of public speaking, I find that a lot of schools and workplaces are very accommodating. So definitely ask about accommodations ahead of time. If you're a student and it's mandatory to give an oral report as part of your grade, talk to your teacher and see if there's anything they can do for you. Teachers are usually very accommodating and they can, ask you to write an essay or just present to them. And so definitely talk to them and see what they can do for you. If you must present, take some deep breaths to make sure you're not lightheaded and that you're getting enough oxygen, and try to maintain your composure as well. So that just means try your best not to look too nervous, and feel a bit more confident within yourself, and hopefully that will show. And also understand that the first few minutes of any presentation or public speaking will be the most nerve-wracking. You've got all the information ahead of you that you have to slowly let your audience know about. It's a lot to digest first up. So just take it slow and understand that you're going to be nervous at first. But as you start to talk, you're going to feel a lot more natural and flowy and really get into the presentation yourself. And you should feel a lot more comfortable within the first couple of minutes. And remember, everybody messes up. Every single person will mess up when it comes to public speaking or, quite frankly, anything else. However, it's important for you to feel as powerful and in control as you can within your own presentation and less vulnerable when you're giving these presentations. So I'm hoping that these tricks and some upcoming ones will help you with that. But just a key reminder, everyone messes up. You can strive for perfection, knowing you'll never reach it. That's a quote that my grade 9 music teacher gave us, and I think it applies for a lot of different things, including public speaking. Now, this video I found to be quite helpful. It's about 2 minutes long, and it's called Public Speaking Anxiety and Tips to Overcome Your Fear. So let's take a look at this.
Did you know that more than 50% of the people in the world are more afraid of public speaking than they are of dying? That's more than 1 in 2. Whenever we go out to speak in public, if it's 10 people, 1,000 people, or just one person in front of you, something happens. Namely, one of our 5 senses is fired off. The 5 senses: I see something, I smell something, I taste something, I hear something, or I feel something. When one of these is fired off, something happens inside my brain. Namely, it's called adrenaline. When adrenaline goes inside my brain, my teeth will go like, and my pitch will go up because I'm going to speak a little more high, and I'm most likely to speak very fast. Why? Because the adrenaline is teaching us to go faster and faster. It's something to protect us. Nothing wrong with it, just protection. How can I interrupt this system? It's 2 steps. Step number 1, put yourself on your toes and let yourself fall on your heels. toes, heels, toes, heels. Very easy, and immediately go into action. When you're sitting down, just wiggle your toes in your shoes so you feel your feet. Feel your butt in the chair, start talking. Get yourself in the here and now. Nothing to be afraid of. Number 2, get your chin parallel with the floor. Whenever your chin is parallel with the floor, you can go up, because when I go up with my chin, adrenaline immediately is coming to the rescue. So it will make my voice tremble. You know, the tremble, like you go like this, the pitch goes a little bit up, so you think I'm not confident about myself, and the teeth go like, not literally this hard, but they go just a little, so you get the trembling voice. So easy, get the chin like this, stand on your feet, wiggle your toes, and you're ready, set to go.
So I found that video to be quite useful, especially since he gives you specific tips on what you can exactly do to avoid sounding nervous and how to feel and sound a bit more confident.
Did you know that more than 50%?
So next up, for section 4, we are going to be talking about the types of public speaking, and there happen to be the 4 types. So the first one is ceremonial. So for example, that's giving a speech for a special occasion. There is also demonstrative, and that's explaining a topic or concept. There's informative, which is transferring information and data to others. And there's also persuasive, which is convincing your audience of your idea or point of view. And we're going to talk about these 4 in detail. So ceremonial speech, for example, this could be you giving a speech at a wedding or graduation party or even an office party, for instance. It doesn't have to be big, however, it is celebrating something or commemorating something or someone. So here are some tips for that. First up, don't be afraid to get personal. Including a story or memory can be really helpful and to explain the personal impact that you have to this event or person. So if you're at a graduation party, you know, you can talk about how proud you are of the new grad and how, you know, the hardships they've battled, but now they've made it to the end. It's also important to focus on the occasion and to not bring up anything other than who and what is being celebrated, and also to know your audience. And this is actually key for all types of presentations, for you to be able to tailor your message to suit your audience. And that means using appropriate language, you know, bringing up appropriate jokes, things like that. Knowing your audience will give you the tools you need to say what you think they want to hear and what they need to hear in a way that they would like to hear it. Next up is demonstrative speech. For example, you know, how to bake a cake or how to change a tire. The kids at school, if they're doing a scientific experiment in the classroom, that could be a demonstrative speech. How to work a new software at work, for instance. And here are some tips for that. So first up, you got to explain the value of your presentation to keep your audience engaged and willing to actively learn. They got to know why your presentation is valuable to them. It's important to outline the process first as a summary at the beginning so that your audience knows what's to come and they can kind of follow along on the process and they know when the halfway point is and when the ending is. And that also gives them a quick summary just so they know a bit more about the topic overall at first. It's important to keep it concise. You know, make sure that every step is thoroughly explained. Use simple language when possible. Don't use a lot of jargon, especially if it's rather specific, and explain anything that your audience may not know about. And also consider questions ahead of time. So ask yourself, what questions would you be asking if you knew nothing about the topic? And include those answers in your presentation so that it's beginner friendly. Next up is informative speech, and this is very common in school and work. So for example, team meetings in the morning where everybody updates everybody else on what they're working on, lectures in university or college, or classes in high school and elementary school. And this presentation too is an example of an informative speech. And it's quite similar to demonstrative speech because you're just informing others of information and data that you know. Because it's so similar to informative speech, the tips are kind of similar. So for example, outline a summary to begin with, be concise with what you present and what you say. Consider potential questions ahead of time so that your presentation is beginner friendly and everybody can understand. Also use simple and understandable terms, especially if you're discussing something specific. So for example, at my 3-minute thesis competition and also my York University conference, I was presenting my research, which does come with some big words. I don't reach for those words. If I'm just informing the public of someone, I assume that a lot of them haven't had the amount of research into this topic that I have. So I choose simpler words so that everybody can understand. And also leave room for discussion or further questions at the end, if allowed, to generate discussion and further connect with your audience and also learn from one another. A lot of good discussions involves sharing information where they learn from you and you learn from them. So it's a really valuable part of any speech or presentation. The importance of building up informative speech skills include learning how to facilitate conversations. And this is really important in both personal and professional settings. Being able to talk to people is an amazing skill, not just socially, but also professionally. And it's going to get you far if you know how to convey information. It also helps you build credibility. If people know that you know what you're saying and how to say it, they believe you and you build credibility. And that also increases your chances of building leadership skills and getting those leadership roles within your organization. And finally, we have persuasive speech. For example, this could be doing a job interview. You're trying to prove and persuade them that you're the best candidate for the job. If you're trying to pitch a promotion to your boss, that's persuasive speech. If you're pitching ideas to your classmates or your coworkers, or if you're trying to win a contest like me in 3-minute thesis, that's all persuasive speech. Some tips for this include, again, remembering the key, which is knowing your audience, because giving a presentation to a boss versus a new coworker are going to be very different. They know different things, and how to persuade them is going to be different too. When it comes to appearance, make sure that your body language and your tone of voice are appropriate, and definitely make sure your movements are flowy, but that you're being very open as well and not being closed off to the audience. Maintain that eye contact. Your message. It's important to develop a strong message to start off with so that your audience hears the most interesting part and they get hooked in and they want to keep hearing more. And also explain the importance of why your idea is important to them or their corporation. And that will definitely help them maintain interest in hearing what you're about to say. And that also develops curiosity within the audience to keep them engaged as well. And finally, the last section is after the speech. So what you should do after the presentation is over. First up, give yourself a pat on the back and celebrate a little bit. It's not easy whether you present it to one person or whether you present it to 1,000. It's not always easy. So definitely celebrate. If you did great, celebrate. And if you did poorly, celebrate. You deserve it. And here are some tips on how to deal with feedback and criticism. So I kind of call this like the post-presentation self-analysis. And this is definitely the analysis part where you kind of read through your feedback and criticism. You won't always get feedback and criticism. However, when you do, here are some tips for that. First up, it's important to remember that it is nothing personal. Recognize that anything they're critiquing your presentation, not you as a person. They may be critiquing your skills or how you spoke or some of the words you used. Again, that's part of your presentation. That's not you as a person. You do not gain value or lose value by that. Gratitude. It's important to show gratitude, even internally, for those who provide valuable feedback, because telling somebody how to improve is not always easy. Now, that's part of some people's roles. If you are a student, you're going to have your teachers or professors evaluate you. If you work for a company, your boss is going to be evaluating you. Even though that's part of their job, it's not always easy on their side as well. So show some gratitude to them. And understand that everything they're telling you you're doing wrong or could improve on means that you're getting better. Also ask for examples. If you receive general feedback, don't be afraid to ask them, can you give me a detailed example of how you can improve? So if you gave a presentation and somebody said, you weren't being really clear with some of your topics, you can ask, what topics were not clear enough? How would you recommend I convey that information? I didn't include that information because it's a little bit too complex and I didn't think the audience would care. However, I know now. However, how do you think I could convey this information the best? Do you think I should use visuals like a chart? Do you think I could include a video for multimedia? Don't be afraid to ask for specific examples. A lot of times people criticizing are not giving you specific examples because they don't care, but because they don't know whether you know. And also maintain balance within yourself, because every presentation that you do, there will be some areas that you do amazing on and some areas that you will not do amazing on. And that's perfectly fine and so normal. So make sure to recognize both. Be proud of yourself, but also know that there's always room for improvement. And this is kind of the self-evaluating, post-presentation evaluating portion, where I always ask myself these 4 questions. So what did I do right? What am I proud of? What did I say or do that felt really right to me? What do I think my audience enjoyed? And then the flip side, what could I improve on? Did I talk too fast? Did I talk too slow? Did I give enough information? Was I clear enough? And that's a good way for me to improve. And also, what techniques did I use before and during the presentation that made it effective? Did I give the speech to a family member ahead of time? Was that helpful? Did I give it to a friend ahead of time? Was that helpful? Did I ask my teacher to read it ahead of time? Was that helpful? So ask yourself what you did that helped you feel confident about your presentation. And then again, on the flip side, what should I try next? How can I make it better? How can I make myself feel more confident? I only rehearsed twice. Would it be better if I rehearsed 3 times? There were some sections that I tried to memorize but couldn't. Maybe I'm just not going to try memorizing that. These 4 questions are key on evaluating yourself and how you did. It's key to recognizing how well you did and the aspects and portions of that, but also giving yourself enough room for improvement, and also understanding that there's always room for improvement. And these are just some ways that you can ask yourself how to do so. I'm going to wrap up the presentation with some additional resources for you all. The first one I found very interesting. It's a video on YouTube called 5 tongue exercises for clear speech and articulation. And this also focuses on enunciation as well. So these are just some mouth and tongue exercises, a little bit of singing and things like that to really help you sound as clear as you can.
Hey, what's up? It's Lady Tina.
And then I also included these 3 resources as well. Harvard University has 10 tips for improving your public speaking skills. There is also a link on ESL activities if you are a new English learner, and some activities you can do for that. And also a link for a free 1-hour digital course by Google on public speaking. So I found those to be really helpful, and I'm sharing them with you tonight. So with every single thing you heard today, with those tips and tricks, I hope you found them useful. And I hope that this will encourage you to let your voice be heard. It's so important to practice public speaking, both in your personal and professional life. And I hope that this presentation was useful for you all. Thank you all so much for listening. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach me at kelly.wang@ontariotechu.net. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I do have a question actually and a comment. So let's start with the comment first. I was called to the Jordanian Bar Association after I was a university professor. So I used to do long lectures in front of a lot of students. However, it was so difficult to stand in front of the judge for the first time. I do remember my first appearance, and I was supposed to say only 1 sentence, 6 or 7 words, that's it. And that to be, that sentence is the template we should say in order to ask for an adjournment. However, when the moment of truth came, I've just forget it, and nothing came to my mind. At that point, I will never forget that other side lawyer who just whispered those words in my ear. So I've just said them and get out of that situation. Later on, when I told that story, people say, oh no, we could never think that you could hesitate. But this is support what you've just mentioned in your presentation. You might be good at something, but in other platform with other audience, things might be difficult.
Absolutely, Haitham, and that's an excellent point. First up, though, congratulations. I'm sure you did fantastic. And I myself have had that happen before as well, where you feel so confident in yourself and your presentation abilities, perhaps, especially with the amount of experience that you've had. But when a new situation arises, new environment, new audience, people to impress, that's the other thing too, the end goal, your nerves can really scrunch you up. And thank you for sharing your experience. I'm sure you did fine, but unfortunately, it happens to all of us, right? So.
Yeah, well, that's true. So questions. One, if you're familiar with the term of word salad, sometimes you're thinking about something, but you would say something totally else. Once, if you made that mistake, what is the best recommended practices to do to handle such situation?
Oh, very good question. And you just brought back a memory from grade 9 for me. If you don't mind me sharing that story, I remember when I was in grade 9 science class, we were working on space and I did my presentation on the sun and I was standing in front of the room. I already practiced my presentation. I was very confident in it. And there was a part where everybody laughed and I didn't think much of it. And I sat down afterwards and the person who sat next to me said, "Kelly, you messed up in the presentation." I was like, "I read from my notes. Are you sure I messed up?" And they were like, "Yeah, I think you were supposed to say the earth revolves around the sun, but you said the sun revolves around the sun." I didn't even notice. My tip for that is if you didn't notice, oopsies, it kind of just passes you by. If you do notice, however, you said a similar word instead of the actual word. For example, if you said set to instead of expected, they mean the same thing, just move on. Again, if you make a mistake that's not dire, just move on. They won't even notice. But if you do make a mistake that is significant, a significant part of your topic, you can recover quickly as you can, whether that's repeating your sentence again or say rather. So if you say, today's weather is going to be sunny and cloudy, or rather windy with a chance of showers later on. So don't make a big deal out of it. Just quickly move on. And that's something I learned in journalism as well. When you're newscasting, it's good to not ponder on those mistakes for too long.
Thank you very much, Kelly. So why do we sometimes have that fear to the camera? So we don't like to be recorded. We don't like so some people would really be afraid to talk to a camera or in a studio. How we can handle such?
That's a great question, Haitham. Absolutely. The nerves are totally different when multimedia is involved. If you're presenting in front of just your colleagues, like 3 to 4 people, it's going to be different than you sitting in a room with 3 to 4 people with a camera in front of you, with a live stream rolling, with a recording going on, like what we're doing right now. I think people are afraid for several reasons. The main reason being they know their actions are not going to come and go. They know their actions are permanent. This video is already on YouTube and it will be on YouTube. So if I mess up, that mistake is going to be in the video. All of my stumbles are already in the video, sort of thing. If it's live, if you messed up, think of all the people who are watching that are live. They're going to notice my mistake too. And you don't know if one person's watching or a million people are watching. So it's definitely nerve-wracking, that kind of fear of the unknown. Now, for someone who works in media, if you get invited to do an interview, for instance, whether that be for radio or television, one thing that I hope this will calm down your nerves is that the hosts should give you preparation ahead of time to make you feel a bit more comfortable. So, they'll tell you the topic that you're going to be discussing. They might tell you some questions that they'll be asked to you, and they'll make sure that you feel comfortable as well. A tip I would give is that a lot of the time, without or with a camera in front of you, they just want a conversation. So just talk to them as if there's no camera in front of you, and you will feel a bit more comfortable, hopefully, after a few minutes. So don't be afraid. The host should calm you down a bit. The topic you're talking about, if you're invited to go on any show, is already something you have experience or expertise on. So trust yourself, trust the host, and don't fear the camera or microphone. Yes, it's going to record everything, but at the end of the day, it's just a conversation.
Thank you very much. This is so helpful, and I hope this tips would be very useful for so many students who are looking to get great grades, so many employees who are looking to get more promotions and better jobs. So that would be so helpful. You've helped them, Kelly, with this. So thank you very much. And that would be recorded for you as well. You'll find it somewhere in your life.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Haitham. And I appreciate the opportunity to come back again and do another presentation.
By all means, my friend, we are lucky.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us tonight at this session with Rights and Responsibilities Awareness Initiative. We are looking forward to see you at another session with us. Be safe, be well, and have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye-bye.